Thank you. Right, so I want to quickly ask Malcolm if he would put his camera on.
Right, I think my camera is on.
Perfect, thank you.
Right. Hello, everybody. I'm devastated not winning a point, but for all of you who didn't win a point and you're not geographers, there is life still for you, and that life is Think Teacher. So Clinton kindly did explain to you how you should sort out the QR code. At worst, use your camera to take a photograph, which and then you'll be able to sort out the link from that. And the link is there for Think Teacher as well. Of course, since you've all been so attentive, you've had to reach for your phone and switch it on first, because I know when you're in these webinars, all you do is focus on the screen and not do your own business on your phones. So thank you so much for your focus. Now, very simply, I think what's excited me tonight is, I think it was Aronka's comment, exciting times ahead. Well, there's no doubt that that is the case, and the more things change, the more they stay the same. And I think Think Teacher, if you look at the three words at the bottom on the screen in front of you, benefits, support, and care. And Think Teacher is really determined to try and ensure that those of us who know that this noble profession is a vocation which really does change the world, we need to ensure that we stem the tide of those many people who leave the profession, often because they're burnt out, and by the time their holidays come, they're so exhausted they can't enjoy them. And just as they start relaxing, we all got to fire up for the next term. And I think the purpose of Think Teacher on the one hand is to host webinars like this. There was a comment made about teachers having to be trained how to use ChatGPT. Well, I think this is one of Think Teacher's roles. I've using in a development of head prefects across the country. I ran some webinars with chat rooms where head prefects of different schools got together and chatted about the meaning of life, of being a prefect in a purposeful and ethical way, and learning about leadership across the country. So I think there are huge opportunities here. And if you could through a show of hands, which I'm sure Bridget or one of the others can pick up, just a thumbs up to say we'd be very keen to have another session, which is more about training related aspects related to ChatGPT, where you can go into chat rooms and talk with people across the country and from New Mexico and other places, and earn points as well for that, about sharing practice with ChatGPT. I think it's of huge benefit. At the same time, I think...
Hi, Thunder. Yeah. Waking off.
Think hike experience at Cradle Moon Lakeside Lodge, where we had about a group of teachers who came along and participated in a hike, really just to get out there and relax and enjoy. People with like-minded interests. In other words, they were educators. And what I enjoyed most was the one teacher who's in the middle of marking exams who said something on the lines of the following: wow, I'm so glad I came. I didn't really want to get out of bed, but it's been so energizing. I've really actually enjoyed it. And it was so good to get out, far cheaper than going to my counselor and far more enjoyable. So it's that part of Think Teacher, I think, which is very important. And there are a number of areas where we believe there are opportunities for people to get together and relax. And I think that's what it's about. Bridget is going to be putting our winter news flash up. Our next hike will be a Spring in Your Step hike, obviously in September, also at Cradle Moon. And the likelihood there is that Andy Dott, the owner and a very serious conservationist, will be taking us on a hike. It's the time when all the babies drop because it's spring, obviously, and all who were along enjoyed it thoroughly. We also have Think Talk On the 15th of August at 10 o'clock, there'll be a talk with Claudia from Nourishing Ways, also wellness related. And there are a range of other aspects on our website that link to our activities that we will be hosting. Aspects such as mentorship, the many teachers I've spoken to, some retired, some just experienced and heads in the same space, are very happy to share their experiences and knowledge. And I think we should get away from the view that, first year teachers, good old think or swim special situations. I don't think are ideally the best way to accelerate people's progress and development. But most importantly, life is about relationships. Teaching is about relationships and communicating. And we believe it's very important to create opportunities for people to partake in activities which they enjoy, and just take some time out and not talk shop unless it comes up, unless there's a shared interest. So often people don't do things because they don't have the time to organize them. And that is part of what we believe is important. Apart from all the benefits that are listed, I don't think there's time now to go through all our partners' benefits, but we have Computer Mania, who provide better than Take-A-Lot prices at the moment to Think Teacher members. We have Cirrus Travel on board. Mary Stewart from the Teacher Network is a partner of Think Teacher. There is initial legal support for Think Teacher members from Stephen May, an attorney. Macmillan Education Teacher Campus has partnered with us. Alexander Forbes has partnered with us in terms of retirement and financial management advice. We have Karen Howard is a medical aid consultant in terms of gap cover and all those things that many of us don't have a clue about. And if you're interested in buying a new car, don't buy one until you've joined Think Teacher. And as Clinton pointed out, even a coffee or a cappuccino or 3 of George Clooney's pods is the only amount you will pay per month to join Think Teacher, even cheaper than SAGTA, believe it or not, but huge value for money. And we are partnering with Kia Motors, and they are very preferential rates. So if you're thinking of buying a car, join Think Teacher. And as you know, Kia had a car of the year for this year in the final assessments. So you're looking at a good brand there. So I hope that gives you some sense of what Think Teacher is about. There's a serious side to it, but it's really about food for the soul and energizing you, because, all of us, and me as well, all of us spend our time devoting our energies to helping our students. We can only really do that properly if we make sure that we're in a good space, that we're energized, and that we're exuding positive energy and joie de vivre. Bridget, I think that's enough from me. You've scanned the document, the QR code, and I expect a huge flood of applications to join, which is a paint by numbers process over the next few days, because otherwise you're going to forget and start sending papers and marking. All right, thanks very much.
Thanks so much, Malcolm. Excellent. So, good evening to everyone, and it is so wonderful to welcome you to this very exciting webinar that we're able to hold online, which makes it totally accessible to everyone right across the world. And it's so exciting to see people from other countries that have joined us. I just need to say that's super exciting. I need to go and think about the time there now that you're able to join us. But thank you so much. So we're looking at AI this evening, and I just want to quickly point out to you that our agenda is as follows. We're just doing a quick welcome, then there'll be an introduction of the panel. What is AI, if we're not quite sure yet? A question and answer session with the panel answering questions. In that case, I would like to request that you please put your questions into the chat, which is why I've been asking you to find the chat and tell me where you're from. And then we'll just do some thank yous at the end. So just to have a better webinar experience, I hope you have something warm to drink. I hope that you're sitting under a blanket if it's freezing, but please do keep your videos off. It just allows it to stream better. Please keep it muted so we don't have dogs barking in the background and people can concentrate. And then if you could just put the questions in the chat, that would be fantastic. Right, I'm passing it all over to Kathy now, who's going to take you further.
Hello, everybody. It gives me great pleasure to start the evening off by introducing you to our panelists. And I'm going to start with Dr. Mary Evans. Dr. Mary Evans is a senior lecturer in the School of Geography, Archaeology and Environmental Studies at the University of the Witwatersrand. And she has over 30 years of teaching experience. Dr. Evans has 9 years of experience teaching geography and English at a secondary school level, and 21 years of lecturing geology, geography, and geochronology at the university level. She has lectured in the foundation and mainstream programs and has supervised student projects for honors, masters, and PhD research in various fields, including geochronology, archaeology, geosciences, water quality, 4IR technologies in the energy sector, machine learning, and geoscience education. Dr. Evans has been recognized for her teaching excellence, having received the Convocation's Distinguished Teacher and Distinguished Team Teachers Award and the Vice-Chancellor's Team Teaching Award. In addition, she was awarded the University Chancellor's Female Academic Leaders Fellowship for 2023. As the only optically stimulated luminescence dating scientist at Wits University and South Africa, Dr. Evans manages the only luminescence dating laboratory in the country, attracting international collaboration from countries such as the UK, Denmark, USA, and Russia. Dr. Evans is also deeply committed to addressing food, water, and sanitation issues, and is exploring ways to apply her research to impact society. She was recently awarded a research grant of 1.2 million rand from the Water Resources Commission to assess the conditions of toilets in rural schools and communities and test malodor counteractant technologies to improve the conditions of pit latrines and septic tanks. She is currently collaborating with colleagues from computational and applied mathematics to use machine learning algorithms to predict water quality sensor data. Then Dr. Colleen Henning. Colleen is passionate about science education and is Deputy Head Academics at St. John's College. She was a top 50 finalist in the Global Teacher Prize 2016 and coached a team of students who won the 2015 CERN Beam Line for Schools. She believes education needs to go beyond the classroom to stimulate innovative, creative, and collaborative members of society who contribute to the individual and collective well-being. Colleen is an advocate of open education resources and believes that sharing and collaborating is crucial to quality education. She is the physics internal moderator for the independent examination boards. She has a PhD in particle physics and has been teaching for 25 years. Then Robin Mowat is the Independent Examination Board representative. She started teaching, she started at the IB as an assessment specialist in September 2014. Prior to joining the IB, she ran the history department at St. Andrew's School for Girls. In 2012 and 2013, Ms. Mowat was contributing author to history textbook series, Viva History. In addition to writing content chapters for the FET textbook series, she also designed all the summative assessment tasks. Currently, Ms. Mowat is the assessment specialist for life orientation, history, geography, and non-official languages, as well as accommodations. Her responsibility include training teachers in subject-specific teaching and assessment, the development of the National Senior Certificate examination papers for her allocated subjects, and the management of the accommodation process. She is a member of both the South African Geography Teachers Association and the South African Society for History Teaching. Ms. Mowat sits as a trustee on the Mfundo Trust, an organization which champions educational opportunities for learners from disadvantaged backgrounds. Ms. Mowat has attended a number of local and international educational conferences, presenting topics related to assessment in history and life orientation, inclusive education, and fairness in assessment. The way in which the discussion works tonight is that it's a type of round robin. So there are three questions. In the first round of question 1, Mary begins, followed by Colleen, and then by Robin. In question 2, Colleen starts, followed by Robin and Mary. And in question 3, Robin will start, followed by Mary and Colleen. And now I'm going to hand over to Colleen for giving you information on AI.
Good evening, everybody. And it's so wonderful to see so many people online. It would be wonderful if we could all be in the same room, but this really does give us an opportunity to interact across many borders. I've been asked just to give a sort of short little introduction about what is ChatGPT and a little bit about AI. I'm definitely no expert, but if I can share some of the things that I've found useful to me in terms of understanding what this is all about. So ChatGPT was an example of artificial intelligence that was started in November 2022, and it sort of hit the world with great expectations and great excitement. A new version was released in March this year. And what it is, it's a neural network that is a generative pre-trained transformer. So the GPT is generative, so it makes things up. Pre-trained is the P, and transformer. And so that's what we're going to be looking at this evening, along with a whole lot of other types of artificial intelligence. What it is, it's called a large language model. And so over time, it learns what words it needs to pay attention to, and it also can understand the context of those particular words. And something that I thought was quite amazing is, for example, you can say a dog barks, and you can say there's bark on the tree. And this ChatGPT and other various AIs like it actually can recognize that context. And we'll talk a bit more about context a little bit later. So the way it works, it's designed to learn words and learn things from a text across the internet, across whatever text is out there, it has access to. And so it's given text, it will predict the next word based on patterns. And so it's also referred to as a stochastic parrot. It's not going to be able to make up things for itself. It's not creative, but it's going to be able to parrot and pull from probabilities of what it's found. What happens then is it's fine-tuned. And so a number of humans were used in the beginning, where they were actually got together by OpenAI and were used for teaching the ChatGPT. And then while all of us all over the world have been using it since November, and I hope you've had a chance to try it out, it then reinforces its learning from the human feedback that we're giving it. So we all, every time you use ChatGPT, you are part of the training that it's undergoing. The implications of this that are going to be really important in various fields is that the rate of change of what we are experiencing is accelerating. If we go back to ChatGPT, in 5 days of its launch, it had 1 million users. Within 2 months, there were 100 million users. That's the fastest growth of anything that we've ever seen in technology. And I would guess anything we've ever seen ever. So ChatGPT is just one of the types of AIs that are available. You can get ones that can draw pictures. You can get the other language models, but it really is transformational. And people have referred to this introduction or widespread use of artificial intelligence as a Promethean moment. So it's a bit like when the printing press came in, when the steam engine came in, when the internet arrived. It's about how it's going to deliver efficiencies across a whole range of domains. And I thought this example was really quite amazing. There's a program called DeepMind by Google, and they've got an AI called AlphaFold. And what it does is it does a protein folding problem because it tries to understand protein shapes, and then allows people to understand the diseases and to create new medicines. So scientists took decades, and they determined the structure of 194,000 proteins. This AI, AlphaFold, in 1 year alone, found out the structures for over 2 million proteins. So the efficiency of these AIs in doing things that they're really good at is absolutely mind-blowing. And it's something that we can really use and access for things that we want to be doing. So it's going to change everything, including how do we learn, how do we work, how do we collaborate. It's going to change how people cheat, how people commit crimes. And so everything that we have at our disposal, including AI, it's going to have a dual use. We can use it as a tool, or we can use it as a weapon. And as the discussions have started coming along, both of those aspects of AI have been coming to the fore. But our only choice as teachers, the way I see it, is that we have to accept it, we have to adapt it, and we have to encourage using this as a tool to be able to make our students' lives easier, to make our lives easier, and to actually enhance the learning for our students. Maybe just an interesting tidbit before I finish off is in June, the Washington Post reported that ChatGPT, for the first time, has lost users in June, and it's a 10% decrease. And so we can ask ourselves, is this a questioning in our faith in AI? Or is it really just because the schools in the US closed for the summer holidays? Who actually is using this ChatGPT? There's also questions around regulation that's looming, and AI have the abilities been tuned down so that there's more control over what is happening. So we get more and more answers like, I'm not able to answer that question than what we might have got a few months ago. So it's a huge, big tech arms race between OpenAI, Google, Microsoft. Elon Musk has got his own company now, XAI. And it's just this huge thing that's erupting all over the world. It's new, and it's really quite exciting to see what's going to happen from here on in. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Colleen. All right, to start with the questions then, the first one says, how can AI and ChatGPT be effectively integrated into the education sector in South Africa to enhance teaching methods and improve student learning and teaching workload? So we're going to start with Mary.
Thank you, Kathy. And thanks everyone for having me on this panel. I think it's quite exciting. And as Colleen has mentioned, AI and ChatGPT particularly is new, but it's actually been almost, six months or so since we had the previous talk. And in that time, it's actually exploded even more. And it's interesting to me that the whole discussion around AI starts, at the level of the Vatican, in government, in business, and now in schools, and down to the level of our students. So it's literally infiltrated society. And so how it is that it can be integrated into education, it's almost a non-question, because it has to be integrated into education. And what we need to discuss is how, and how do we tame the beast that Colleen has just mentioned. Is it a tool, or is it a weapon? And some of the ways in which we can use AI, and particularly ChatGPT, I think, in classes, is to engage students with it. They've already been there, they've already worked with it. And we have to, as teachers, we have to keep up. We have to keep up with the students, and we have to keep up with the programs itself. So what I did today, for example, was I wrote an abstract for a paper that I'm about to submit. And I asked ChatGPT, do you think this is a good abstract? That was literally my phrase. Do you think this is a good abstract? And I copied the abstract in, and it said no, and then proceeded to explain to me what I did wrong or how I could have improved it. So in terms of lightening the load for teachers, it might be a way for you If you're not sure about how to assess something, is to ask ChatGPT, is this a good answer to this particular question? How can the student improve it? Because sometimes I think we run out of ideas, and our own creativity is a little challenged when you've seen the same answer again and again and again, and you know what I mean. It's very useful in generating lesson plans. Again, I tried with a course that I'm teaching, and I asked it to generate a lesson plan for me for a master's course on food security, and it gave me some ideas about what might be useful or not. So one of the things that I like doing with using ChatGPT is just writing reference letters for students. I need to put in the detail, and it does that. So the way in which we can use this tool to lighten our load is amazing. But we can also use it with the students themselves, asking them to check their own work, to check each other's work using this mechanism, because then they can engage with it. I think to just leave students to it on their own is not a good idea, because, you know, like every tool that we've taught students how to use, this is one that we actually have to teach them. We need to teach them how to be discerning, how to think about it. So it doesn't take away the thinking process, it just enhances it or helps them with it. Colleen, sorry, Kathy, I think, is that okay?
Yes, thank you very much. Colleen, over to you.
Thanks, Mary and Kathy. I think there's so many opportunities that we can get out of using ChatGPT. But before we do that, I think education is changing and it needs to change. And for the longest time, what we've been doing with our students is we've been asking them questions and they've been trying to answer them. And what AI and ChatGPT allows us to do is to use those tools that we now have to focus on questioning the answers or asking questions. And I think that's a very different take on education compared to what we've been doing for decades or even longer about how do we answer questions. So we can use these tools to be able to develop skills in our students. The things that we want our students to know or to be able to do, their abilities, is critical thinking. Can they apply ethical reasoning? Do they have information literacy? Can they access information, look at its value, and assess things like that? And so in the classroom and for our students, one of the things that we can do is take away some barriers. For example, students can take text and put it into ChatGPT and ask it to give them a summary, or a piece of work that a matric student might be battling with. They can put it in and say, please, can you explain this at a grade 10 level? And that kind of thing allows for differentiating text for different reading levels and allowing people access to things. What ChatGPT is also incredibly good at, because it's a language model, it repackages content. So if you want a summary, if you want a study guide, if you want revision questions, that's something that is really excellent at doing. The other area where it's been useful and students are using it, and not just students, even people that are quite lonely are spending time talking to ChatGPT. So it can serve as a very interactive model or conversation that will allow our students to make their learning more enjoyable and engaging. And it's about teaching our students how to write the prompts, how to engage with this tool. We also have a large number of students that have different language backgrounds and are not first language English speakers. And so ChatGPT actually can level the language playing field because it's really good at translating. And if students are trying to study, it's really hard for them just to sit and try and study through some notes. They can upload some notes and say, please ask me 10 questions on this content, or please set 5 multiple choice questions. And so it allows immediate feedback to the students about what their learning is and things, which is really very powerful. For teachers, it's going to hopefully free us from the jobs that we don't want to do and allow us to focus on the things that are important, which is interacting and caring for our students. So we could you can use, and not just ChatGPT, but there's AI that we can use for automated grading and assessments, short answers, where we don't have to sit and mark these things ourselves. We could actually mark 200 multiple choice papers in maybe 10 minutes. And that really does make things very efficient, and so on. Like Mary said, really good at writing a lesson plan, and creating some questions, just to start getting people thinking. And it allows teachers to have a resource to start working with things that they want to apply. Professional development for teachers. You're a teacher that is by yourself in a school, you're only the only subject teacher there, and you haven't taught a particular topic for a long time. Ask ChatGPT, please give me an overview of this topic. Please give me some recommended resources. And that is incredibly useful, because you don't have to go and find things yourself. They give you a whole list, whether it's videos, whether it's books, textbooks, articles, and you can then go and access that information without you having to find it. And then the one Mary spoke of is writing reference letters and things. You can say, write a letter to say, and tell it briefly what you want to say, and it will generate something that's really well written and sort of is used for communication. So there's a huge amount of advantages for students as well as for teachers. But I think the whole time what we have to keep in the back of our mind is we have to use it very carefully and thoughtfully, because the teaching profession is based on human-centered learning experiences, and we need to keep that in mind. It's not just about what they're learning, it's about students being able to answer the questions about, who am I? How do I do this? And we need students to be able to distinguish between those kinds of questions. So AI, if it can replace if a teacher can be replaced by AI, then teachers should be replaced by AI. But teaching is so much more than delivering content. And so no matter how good AI gets, if you have a really good quality teacher, they will always have the position to be able to interact and work with students to help them learn who they are and how do they do these things. Thanks.
Thanks, Colleen. And now it's over to Robin.
Thank you, Kathy, and good evening, everyone. I think my two guest panelists really have summed up a lot of what I would have spoken to about in terms of artificial intelligence in education. Obviously, when ChatGPT first became a known entity, really was the end of last year, when it really started getting known and people started asking questions. And certainly it was our go-to space, and it's the one that a lot of schools are talking about. They're talking about ChatGPT and what impact this has on our schooling and the way we teach and the way learners complete all assessments. And it is absolutely something to take cognizant of and be aware of and engage with, because we know our learners are using this tool. But I think we would be short-sighted to simply keep this discussion looking at ChatGPT solely, because really the reality is that artificial intelligence has subtly found its way into our classrooms as it has in our everyday lives. We shouldn't be surprised that artificial intelligence has found its way into our classroom when we recognize the role it plays in our everyday lives. I was in East London on the weekend for work, and I had to find my B&B, and gone are the days, sorry geographers, that one would look in my map book. I simply put it onto GPS and it got me the fastest route there. That's artificial intelligence. When you want to put together a music list, you know, Spotify looks at all your previous listening choices and does it for you. Even our Checkers 6060 app brings up the things that you normally buy. So artificial intelligence has found its way into our lives very subtly, and perhaps to a certain extent without us not even really being that aware of it. So it should not be a surprise it's found its way into our classrooms. For me, though, I think the value of artificial intelligence is really the formative assessment practices, because we know formative assessment is assessment for learning. And for me, artificial intelligence apps such as ChatGPT, for example, but there are a host of others. I think of the Amy app, which is for mathematics. These are intelligent tutoring systems. And what this does is uses artificial intelligence techniques to stimulate engagement with a human tutor. So it provides that instant feedback that Colleen was talking about. And we know how important instant feedback is to our learning and engagement processes. It's one of the reasons why gaming, kids with their gaming that they enjoy, that they go home after they've done their homework, they go and do their gaming. One of the reasons why gaming is so popular amongst learners is because they do get that instant feedback. So intelligent tutoring systems are very important because they allow learners to take responsibility for their own learning. So for many, many years, we've spoken about individualized learning paths, but it's very difficult to do so when you've got a class of, say, 30 to 35 learners. How do you provide an individualized learning path for each student? It is a difficult thing to do. But using artificial intelligence, the learners are able to help construct this individualized learning path. And they take responsibility for their own learning. So it helps us develop those soft skills that we talk about of that of lifelong learning. What Colleen said about adapting the readability of texts is hugely important. We know that our learners read to learn. And if the reading that they're doing is inaccessible, then it's going to stunt their learning processes. So the ability to use artificial intelligence to adapt readability is also hugely useful for our learners. Also, artificial intelligence supports intelligent virtual reality. This enhances the learning experience for learners by creating authentic environments that might not necessarily be easily replicated in their own context. So these are just some ways in which artificial intelligence could be used to enhance the teaching and learning experience for our learners. And like I say, we need to go beyond just looking at ChatGPT. Just off the top of my head, Yippity is an app which allows you ultimately, it takes any text that you're working with and creates a short quiz on it. So it is basic factual recall. But if you've just completed, let's say, quite a voluminous section, a content-heavy section in the classroom, and you just want to check your kids' recall and see that they've come to grips with some of the concepts you've taught, then instead of sitting there thinking of the questions to develop, you could put it into the Yippity app and it will develop these for you. DALL-E, which is the creation of images, where learners take text-based discussion or prompts, and it creates images. This is a hugely powerful tool. Just me as a historian, I would use it to say, guys, you're going to create a cartoon on the causes of the French Revolution. Now, in the past, they would have sat and worried about well, I can't draw, I can't do this. Well, use the prompts and use DALL-E to do this for you. So artificial intelligence is opening up massive ways to engage with our learners and learners of all ages. I think that's also important, that this artificial intelligence can start as far as early as the nursery schools, and obviously, like Dr. Mary Evans have told you, is finding its way into higher education. Thank you.
Thanks, Robin. The second question: what specific benefits and concerns do AI and ChatGPT bring to the education sector in South Africa, with particular reference to the validity of assessments? And Colleen is going to start this.
Thanks, Kathy. So we've talked a lot about the benefits already in the first question. So maybe the benefits is really just about efficiency, its consistency, and it also provides a sense of objectivity. If you are asking AI to look at students' work and mark or assess things. Just as Robin was saying, immediate feedback and that prompt feedback really enhances the learning. It also gives a benefit that instead of having to Google something and it gives you pages and pages of things you have to go and figure out and decide what's going to be most useful. If you start with ChatGPT, it gives you a much more overview of everything that it's actually put together. And so it's a nice introduction to start accessing things. The concerns are huge, and one of the biggest concerns has to be cheating and plagiarism. And whether the assessments are going to be valid. That's something I think there's strategies that we can use to get around that, and I'll talk about that just now. But we cannot count on these automated checkers and turn it in and things like that. They're not going to be picking up these things from the artificial intelligence. The other concerns that we have to keep in mind is that it's not guaranteed to be factual. You'll see if you've used ChatGPT a bit, and it's really not interested in the truth. It's simply taking information that it already has from across the world, from all its learning, and putting it together. And it will just make up references to things that don't actually even exist. And it can basically can give out nonsense based on probability. And we have to be aware of this, and we have to help our students understand how these systems work so that they are aware of what's happening. Where we can access it and sort of work around cheating and plagiarism is these ChatGPT especially. It struggles with logical reasoning and causal relationships. And so if we use those kinds of things in what we're doing with our students, we will be able to use the tool, but still have the process that we can have in place to check what's going on. And the focus is on knowledge in terms of students using it, but it's about how do we use that knowledge, how do we use what we can get an access from these AIs to actually enhance the critical thinking and creativity. And if I can suggest some other ideas a little bit later. One of the biggest concerns for me is that humans over the generations have made advancements in learning and finding things out. If we become totally reliant on AI and things like ChatGPT, are we going to be creating mediocrity? And what I mean by that is these programs work on things they've already learned. And so it's just an aggregation of everything that the system knows, that the machine has learned. The machine has never experienced any kind of emotion. And so how do we still get the human race to make progress if all we're doing is relying on what we already know? And so that's what I mean by create mediocrity. Other concerns is keeping users safe. The information has been obtained from somewhere. We don't really know what resources have been put into these AI systems. There's a lot of talk about regulation and oversight. Who's that going to be done by? Is it a group that we can trust? Is it going to be a group that has a particular agenda? We don't know. And so all of these concerns are ones that when we're using the tool effectively and efficiently and in a very helpful way, we actually need to be aware of these challenges. Also, data privacy. If you start putting things in about students, or you're asking them to write you ask ChatGPT to write a reference letter, say, what information do you put in that you actually get the ChatGPT to write about? Do you just say it's student XYZ, and then once you've got the information, then you put in personal details? These are things we're going to have to think about as we make use of this these tools. The other concern that I think we need to really look at in terms of teaching is that the teachers that we have working with our students, they need to have emotional intelligence. They need to be empathetic. And I don't think yet, and maybe it might come in time, that AI can't provide sensitivity, supportive, empathetic, relevant feedback that is talking to the person in front of us. And I think that's the place where teachers and AI are going to be able to play different roles. And so the suggestion about strategies is use a hybrid model. So you combine your AI with a teacher that has oversight and review. You get your students to actually talk about their work and how they got to their conclusions. So there's an interaction and a conversation that takes place. If we focus more on learning and growth rather than on test results, if we could one day get to that kind of culture, the students will also be more interested in the learning than what number comes up on their report. And to get away from knowing that AI is using information that it's gathered from sources across the world, if you use if you're doing history and you talk about or you're wanting to research something that is very recent history and something that's very closely related to a small community, you're likely to not have ChatGPT would probably not be able to be very good at giving you that feedback. So that's a lot of concerns, but also a lot of ways to still make it really effective and overcome some of those concerns. So the teacher could ask ChatGPT to write 2 different articles from different viewpoints, and then you hand it to the students and ask them to analyze, criticize arguments, and then you can have a class debate using information that has been grasped from ChatGPT. You can generate some text and give it to the students and ask them to decide if it's valid or not. Can they support it? Can they refute it? Can they find references to support what they're going to be saying about the text? It's not just language that is useful in. IT, computer programming, which I suppose is another language, is you can ask it to generate a program to do a certain function, and you can ask it to put in certain bugs. And then you can give that to students and ask them to debug it. And so there's opportunities where you're trying to think of a real world concept about a maths problem that you've given the students, and it's not sort of coming to front of mind. Ask ChatGPT or one of the AIs. One of the exercises I played with was teaching a particular topic. You can get a lesson plan, but you can then be more creative and say, please design a board game that allows me to look at the concept of place value notation in mathematics. And those kinds of things are going to be really, really useful, where we're integrating the AI and the teacher, where we have a hybrid model of the human and the AI. I think there's some huge opportunities in that space.
Thank you, Colleen. And Robin?
Thank you, Kathy. I think, like Colleen, just speaking to perhaps some of the concerns associated with this technology in education and in our classrooms. Firstly, I think it's a double-edged sword in terms of its impact in terms of being able to either democratize and make learning accessible, or it's going to perhaps make that divide even greater. We know internationally, we know even in our own schools and such, that this technology has found its way and our kids are using it. We also know that increasingly any learner who seeks to become employable or to become successful in the world after school is going to need to know how to use this technology and how to use it effectively. And something that concerns me is ultimately accessibility in South Africa to this technology. South Africa has some of the highest data costs in the world, and it's becoming really a cause of concern and can be regarded, in my mind, as a human right. Because we've seen how access to data, access to the internet, and access to this technology is a tool that people need in order to perhaps to learn, in the case of our learners, for teachers to be able to teach effectively, and to maintain and keep up with what's other trends that are going on internationally. And exorbitant and prohibitive data costs means that there is a chance that many South Africans are going to fall further and further behind with regards to these trends, as we have perhaps in some other areas. So that is something of a big concern for me. I know that one of the concerns immediately when ChatGPT was first really became into the public sphere of comment, and something that the IEB dealt with, was around concerns with academic dishonesty. And instead of engaging with perhaps the values of what this technology might do, there was an immediate jump to our kids are going to use this to cheat, and we call it the end of learning. And it's interesting, and sorry, the historian, and we can't help but look back at examples of this from our past. But whenever there is a new technology that finds its way into the classroom, people then speak to the end of learning. So the first step of this is there's a bit of a moral panic. And like we say, perhaps with ChatGPT, well, this is it, our kids are going to cheat. And this moral panic then leads to the anxiety or the fear of the unknown. And I myself have seen this because I spoke about ChatGPT and artificial technology. I just did one slide of it at our principals meetings that we hold in February with our principals around the country. And all of a sudden the emails were coming through, Robin, we need you to come talk to our parents or to our staff about ChatGPT. So there clearly is an anxiety or a fear of this technology because it's seen as a threat. You know, AI is going to replace teachers, or I'm never going to be able to, you know, teach or assess the way I've done in the past. So that this fear then becomes a threat to ourselves. And really what happens are, as we start to hold discussions like this that we're doing now, and we start to work with it in our classroom and we share ideas in our cluster groups, we start to see it as a tool, and that moral panic then dissipates. And again, if you think that this is something new, one only just has to go look at the advent of the calculator in schooling in the 1960s. I mean, I actually have images of people holding, you know, protests around the use of, you know, calculators in the classroom. And there was then again this threat, this moral panic, the end of learning as we know it. And then what happened is that people just got used to it and saw it as a tool and saw how calculators could enhance the understanding. We didn't throw away, you know, the basics of numeracy and those types of skills, but we brought the calculator into our learning space. And, you know, at the IEB, for example, our mathematics papers that are set with the use of a calculator. There's no such thing as a calculator accommodation that you have to apply for, because we realize that in the real world, learners are going to be able or be expected to use a calculator to complete certain functions. And so it is imperative and an ethical obligation on ourselves to make sure that we integrate this tool into our assessment and into our learning. So yes, while I do think there might be some concerns around ChatGPT, I think also sometimes perhaps I think one of a big concern is the need for development of good assessment literacy practice. Because what an area of concern for me is that we get the artificial intelligence to conduct all the assessments. And we know that teachers, assessment is a very important part of their understanding of where learners are struggling, where they're doing well. So it feeds back into the system. And yes, you can use artificial intelligence for some of the assessment practice, but not all of it, because certainly artificial intelligence also focuses predominantly at this stage on recall. And so I worry sometimes that we'll just pass on the responsibility of those tasks we don't necessarily like doing sometimes, like setting tests and marking them, to artificial intelligence, which will have an expense later on in how the teachers engage with the learners and ultimately the learners' performance in the classroom and in examinations. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. And over to you, Mary.
Thanks, Kathy. I don't want to repeat what has been said before, but just interesting for me is last week I was in the UK, and one of the news channels ran an experiment where they used AI in order to create a journalist and a news program, a news information, and they put this together and then presented it as, you know, it was all AI generated. So one of the things that came up was fake news. Obviously, it just generated its own news coverage, but they used an AI character to present the news. And what was interesting about it was that there was no nuance, there was no empathy. The reporter, the AI reporter, reported on the death of something in the most plain and an unempathetic way. And what came out of that was the question is, what is a journalist? And I think that is really important in terms of this discussion, is we have to take a step back and say, what is a teacher and what is education? And when we answer that question for ourselves, is it literally just chasing after the new tools and trying to keep up with it? Or is it a more holistic thing where we're looking at raising young, creative, intelligent individuals who will then go on to make the world a better place? If that is the response that we have, then we can incorporate AI, we incorporate ChatGPT into what we understand as education, rather than, as Robin mentioned, be afraid of it and see it as the end of learning. I think it's quite interesting because I haven't seen it before, but ChatGPT has put a little statement at the bottom of its platform now that says, ChatGPT may produce inaccurate information about people, places, or facts. So they're acknowledging that all the information we get is not accurate. They're getting ahead of the issues around misinformation and fake news. So we need to alert our students to that and say, pay attention, this is a problem, you need to know that. But one of the issues that I find with AI, with computers just in general, with social media, with the whole thing, is that it is reducing human interaction. Colleen mentioned earlier that people who are lonely are spending more time with the chatbot. So that is really good in that they have company, but it's really bad in that it is separating us from what it means to be human and to interact and to socially engage. So I think I'll leave it at that, Kathy.
Thank you very much. Right, the third question. In what ways do you envision AI and ChatGPT transforming the traditional methods of teaching in South Africa? In your opinion, can these technologies provide more personalized and adapted assessment approaches, or widen the gap for those who have access to these technologies and those who do not? So, Robin, if I can start with you.
Thank you. I think for me, the transforming of education in South Africa, and I think anyone who says, teachers are not good, teachers don't like change, teachers are not going to adapt to this, needs to reflect really on how teachers in the space of a couple of weeks moved from, teaching in person to teaching online to teaching hybrid, which shows that teachers are incredibly good at adept at adapting where they need to be. For me, I think one of the biggest focuses on education in South Africa with artificial intelligence now relates to what we call PedTech, okay, or pedagogically led technology. Now, for many, many years, and certainly when I was teaching, and that we spoke about EdTech, educational technology, which really was about bringing technology into the classroom and then adapting the various technologies and our teaching around this. And it became quite a thing. I remember for many years, it was a kind of like, or did you get a whiteboard, and then you'd get a whiteboard and then you're like, okay, well, I've got this whiteboard in my classroom. Now I need to find out how I'm going to use it because the school spent lots of money. So I need to make sure I could, how I can use it. And it was about crowbarring, if you will, the technology into the way I taught, if you will. And the proponent around pedagogically led technology is a lady by the name of Dr. Fiona Aubrey-Smith. And she says now, what we need to do is step back because technology is so integrated into our daily lives that we need to become quite selective and discerning on the way we need on how we use it in our classroom. So we need to think about how technology can be used in a way that is informed by effective pedagogy. So in the past, what happened is we would buy a hammer and then go looking for a nail. That's what EdTech was, okay? But now it's saying, no, hang on. We need to think, well, what is the pedagogy, which we know is often quite personal in the way we approach the subject we teach. We need to think of those learning outcomes. We need to think the context of our class and going, okay, well, this is what I want to achieve. How am I going to achieve it through my pedagogy? And if there is in fact technology and artificial technology that you can use, then you can use it to enhance your teaching and learning. So it's not technology for technology's sake. I think that is the one mind shift that really needs to happen in our classrooms, in our school management systems, and with our parental body. The other issue, I think, of an area of major focus, and obviously one has to just select a few to highlight because there are so many, is around digital literacy. Just like we know that, say, for example, the basics, say, critical literacy is hugely important. I think there's a misinformation around this idea that our learners, because they're born into a world of technology, that they are technologically native. And I think what that has meant is that it's taken the burden off ourselves as educators to teach our learners how to use technology efficiently and effectively and responsibly. If we think, for example, that reading and the written word has been around for centuries, but someone born into that world doesn't mean that they are able to read immediately. They have to be taught how to read critically. And so we have to apply that same mindset to digital literacy, and particularly the responsible use of technology thereof. And so for me, I think in all our subjects, because I don't think it's something that needs to be taught in a vacuum or in isolation, I think it can be integrated into all our subjects, that we need to teach this this digital literacy alongside all those other things like critical engagement and ethical reasoning, responsible usage. And we need to be careful that we cannot assume that our learners bring with them those skills. But certainly anyone from the OECD to the World Trade Organization are telling us that digital literacy is something that needs to be a major point of focus in our classrooms. Thank you.
Thanks, Robin. And Mary, if I can go over to you.
Thanks, Kathy. Sorry, I lost myself there. I think that question that you pose is really important because it speaks to the divide that exists in South Africa. And that is that teachers and students who have access to technology, who have access to data, who have access to electricity, there's almost an imperative, as Robin mentioned earlier, to use those tools and to develop and to get ahead and to become digitally literate. And that is really important. There's another side to this country where people don't have access. And from the first time I did this talk in Rosebank to now, I've actually been traveling through one of the projects that you mentioned, Kathy, to rural areas around the country where the basic need is sanitation and pencils. So when we're talking about ChatGPT and AI, that is not the lived experience of students in rural areas or even of teachers and that. And so when we ask this question, we actually have to address it in that divide. How can we approach that? Maybe it's a question that we can pose to AI. I've been looking at things like Raspberry Pi, which is what they've used in Australia, in the center of Australia where teachers can't get to the area, and they use Raspberry Pi in order to have a teacher in Melbourne or in Sydney, in the big cities, and cast the information then into those rural areas. Is that an option? It is possibly. I don't know how it would work in South Africa, given all our limitations, but not to be negative and to be a Debbie Downer on the issue. But when we're talking about enhancing learning and learning approaches and assessment approaches, we actually have to do it in terms of the divide that exists in the country. Thanks, Kathy.
Thank you, Mary. And Colleen, the last word from you here.
I'd like to just emphasize a lot of what Mary and Robin have already said. So I do think that it's a wonderful method, that we could look at some traditional methods, but I do agree that it's focusing on pedagogy first. That has to be important. And it's also allowing the students to focus on the teachers to focus on the students as human beings that are learning and sort of growing as we go through the thing. The other area that I think this helps is if we can get our students focusing on the learning process it will land up that they will become more lifelong learners. And that's something that's going to really put them on the front foot when they go further on in their lives, because it's going to be about learning new things continuously that they're going to have to be really, really good at. The digital divide that Mary mentioned is a huge concern, but AI is incredibly expensive to run. It's very, very energy intensive. And so at the moment, we've got access to these systems, but in time, we don't know what we're going to be able to have access to. And right now, we know that there are students right across the world that don't even get to go to school, never mind have access to something like this. So it is going to enhance the digital divide, but there are going to be slight opportunities where you can actually take a machine learning thing and you can build it so that you can access things via your cell phone. So even if you have you don't have electricity all the time, in South Africa, there's a lot of cell phone usage, even in rural settings. And if you could access artificial intelligence to be able to use your cell phones, and maybe zero rated for teaching purposes, I think there could be a huge impact that can be made across the digital divide. I know there's a group, Siavula, out of Cape Town, that is doing some amazing things with machine learning in rural areas and across the whole of the country. So there are opportunities to access areas that don't have the infrastructure, but it's going to take some creative thinking and people that it's really are wanting to make that difference. And then lastly, I think I'm worried about our reliance on technology as humans. First of all, we've seen from COVID how the human interaction was diminished using technology, and what the effects of that are going to be socially and on people going forward. And then if I think about when I was at school or varsity, I knew the phone numbers of all my friends in my head. If I wanted to go somewhere new, I had looked up in a map book how to get there, and I memorized it because you couldn't read a map book at the same time as you were driving. And I don't know people's phone numbers anymore, and I don't think people do that because it's so accessible on another device. And that worries me about how reliant we're going to become on technology. And maybe it's fine because it gives us opportunities to focus on other things. But I think it's something we should keep in mind. So yeah, there's going to be wins and there's going to be losses, and they are going to really worry about how this is going to affect people across the world and in every area, not only education. But thank you.
Thank you, and thanks to Robin, Mary, and Colleen.
Thank you so much, Kathy, and to Robin and Mary and Colleen. That was hugely insightful. I really enjoyed that. There are a few questions. If you don't mind, I would like to ask them, read them off the chat, and then whoever feels they would like to just briefly answer, that would be fantastic. One that was placed quite early in the conversation already was from Noreen asking about, will these AI opportunities be available in deep rural schools with limited or no connectivity, and what is the cost? So there have been some answers on that, and I think Colleen also kind of just briefly touched on that. Would these schools be left behind if they don't have access? If someone from the panel could answer. Yes, maybe the panel could just put their cameras on and then indicate who's answering.
So Inika, I think there is the possibility that schools can be left behind. The deep rural area, I mean, I kind of think of it in terms of the charity and the support line or whatever. There seems to be a boundary beyond which resources don't cross over. And this is what I've discovered now in traveling to rural areas. The good thing, though, is that students coming from schools are coming into universities, and there are programs in place at university in order to catch them up. So it's not all doom and gloom. It just means that it takes longer in order to cover what inner city kids have access to. So there are programs, there is a recognition that it is a problem. So not all doom and gloom. There is a possibility for change.
Great, that's very positive. So I asked, do you think students are more intuitive with how AI works as opposed to us oldies? There were some answers on that one as well. And I want to just add on to that because I'm wondering, I have smaller children. Is there like an age limit where they should not be exposed to this? They should be learning, or do you think it's ageless? Anyone want to answer that one?
I think, Inika, it speaks to, and perhaps Colleen might be better because she's dealing with these kids on a day-to-day basis. But certainly, I think, inevitably, we do believe that kids are more intuitive with the space because that the moment, when I was teaching or the moment something happened to the technology, you go ask one of the kids to help you because they just seem to have a handle on it. But I think understanding how the basics work and ultimately, that idea of how to use it effectively and responsibly is something that we need to be cautious about taking it for granted. So I think we need to be hesitant and cautious to say, well, because they know, how to, cast onto the whiteboard, or they know how to set up the Wi-Fi or personal hotspot or something like that, means they know how to use it effectively. But I think it's responsibility also on teachers that the gulf between, because kids are learning regularly in the space by just engaging, it's responsible for teachers to also remain up to date. So I think school management need to reflect and make sure that teachers receive the training in the space as well, if they're going to help guide the learners here. Thank you.
Yeah, very valid. Thank you. Helen's iPad asked, would you accept AI as a co-author in a paper examination project? Maybe a teacher could answer there, or Mary at university.
I mean, AI is just an aggregate of a whole lot of knowledge. So whether you're referencing a particular article or whether you're referencing ChatGPT, I think it's important that you say, this is the information I got from ChatGPT and this is what I've done with it. So yeah, if it was I don't know, Mary would be better to talk about the academic papers, but at school, if a student has clearly referenced what they've got from ChatGPT, why is it a resource different to any other resource? It would be my opinion, but it's about referencing and acknowledging and being honest in how you're getting to this point.
I think that's quite important. And okay, as Colin mentioned earlier, that ChatGPT doesn't create new knowledge. It just reports in a way on knowledge that already exists. And the whole thing about writing papers is referencing what exists and then adding to the body of knowledge your own data. So asking, would you accept it? I know some universities have allocated a percentage of an assignment to AI. And they've said 10%, 20% of your assignment may be this, and everything else has got to be your own work. And that's the way that they've got around having to deal with AI.
That is fascinating. Okay, thank you. So Lexi's very happy that she joined. I think she's Kathy's old student, but she's at a GDE school and she wants to know how you would recommend implementing this learner-centered learning when they have such stringent assessment standards and timelines in the state schools.
Inika, I think just having engaged with some teachers around the space, because a lot of teachers are experiencing in this, and the demand now you've got to teach digital literacy as well as your basic content and skills like that. I think the value here of a flipped classroom could be very, very important. So, using it, like Colleen was saying, to summarize text, to make text more readable, and learners prepare, and then they bring that content you would usually cover in, say, class time. They've done it as part of their homework using these wonderful chats tool or these AI tools, and then engaging with it further in the classroom. So I think looking at examples or the use of a flipped classroom could be one way that you could perhaps try and give yourself a little bit of space to delve deeper into this technology.
Thanks. Yeah, that's actually John just said the same thing in the chat there, the flipped classroom. So yeah, that could certainly work. Thank you. Does anyone else want to add anything to that?
I just want to come back to a question earlier about the digital divide and students that are being left behind. And I think that's sort of a wrong concept. I think that we're not leaving people behind. Other people are just accelerating. And people have been left behind right from long, long ago. But it's a challenge that maybe we can access these tools that we have now on how do we make a difference so that people have the opportunities to be able to move forward. Right now, people are left behind, not because of AI or technology or anything else. They just don't even have a school that they can go to. And those things are real challenges that we all need to think about and try and find ways to make a difference.
Absolutely. Thank you. Anyone else want to add anything to that? Not. Okay. There've been a lot of comments, just general statements that people have made, which are very useful to read through as well. Concerns, obviously, about the whole topic, and also even our curriculum and how it fits in with that. So thank you to everyone for making those comments, and how we can be more efficient and effective. So I think before we take up too much of your time, I'm going to carry on. I just want to share a screen quickly. Clinton, if you could find your camera setting, please. Have you found it?
Yes. Am I visible?
Yes, thank you so much.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for Think Teacher for being our main sponsor this evening. But for those of you in the room who don't know about the Southern African Geography Teachers Association, or what we affectionately call SAGTA for short, here on the screen, you'll see a QR code. All you need to do is turn on your camera, point it to the QR code, and then it'll illuminate with like a yellow block and then take you immediately to our website. There's the web address, the URL anyway. But being a member of SAGTA, the 400 Rand you're paying, which is less than 30 Rand a month, one cappuccino you have to sacrifice as a teacher per month for the year. You get various benefits such as the topo map and orthophoto map downloader, which you can use to create assessments and to do map work and spatial literacy with your students. And as well as the webinars we offer, like this one this evening, which Think Teacher has helped us sponsor. Apologies for the parrot there. You can get various other benefits like prep share, and also networking with people that are like-minded and passionate about geography like yourself. So please visit our website and consider becoming a member of SAGTA. It's 400 Rand a year, and you also have access to conferences, both field trips as well as academic conferences every alternate year. And you also become a member of the Association of American Geographers, which is part of the package and one of the benefits that we have as well. We are looking at trying to get a group of teachers to Honolulu to go and visit the AAG conference in, I think it's August next year, if I get the date right there in my mind. But join us and come and be a part of this wonderful group of people. We call it
Oh, Clinton's gone.
I think he has. He's been struggling the whole evening with load shedding. So, Bridget, did you want to finish up?
Just to finish off, that the AAG conference is in April next year, but Pam will share the newsletter on the chat, hopefully, or else I will, just to conclude. Thank you.
Yeah. Pam, did you want to add anything quickly?
You can see me now. I think I do have to say thank you. Is this where I'm going to do all my thank yous?
Not quite yet.
No, not quite yet.
I've put through already. I think I've shared it on the chat group.
Okay, thank you. I see it there.
Website. So you go to the website at the top on the right-hand side there. It says newsletters. There's newsletter number 1 and number 2. But what I've been actively doing during this webinar is I've been asking people where they come from. If they told me they've won a bonus point for their province, and the following people have earned points for their province or country: Elise, Nisha, Izu, sorry, Valerie, Shamila, Joshwana, Zama, Philip, and Vuzi. So well done, you're going to earn points for your province. So if you read the newsletter, you'll find out about growing provincial capacity. And it's a wonderful information letter, and we hope to incorporate more practical ideas. So they're there. I think, and I am biased, I think KZN's winning the points tonight, but Gauteng is coming quite close. But we've got Eastern Cape, Western Cape. We've got two, I meant to mention Christine, we've got two people from Namibia. And then I think there's from the provinces I've mentioned, but they haven't responded. I think he's originally a Nigerian, so he needs to let us know where he's from, but that's fine. Can I do my thank yous now?
No, just a second, please. Thanks, Pam. I'm going to call you again if you don't mind. Right, Pam. That would then now be your your time to say thank you, please.
I think I'm just doing the thanks now because I think I lost comms,
Yes,
but I've put it in the chat who's earned provincial points. There may be one or two more. So I'd just like to thank you, Inika. For me, you are the queen of webinars.
Thank you.
Just conduct them with aplomb. And if anybody's been on a field trip or watched Kathy Caselli Thompson's Salt, but she was Kathy Caselli in those days, produce or present a weather forecast, you must know she is the absolute hostess of weather forecasting. And she's adapted very well to this ChatITP or ChatGPT. And then Colleen's just a fountain of knowledge. And I'm just so amazed with the wealth of knowledge that come up, the insight that you give us. Thank you. So we have Robin here too. And for us as geographers, she's our honorary geographer because you know she's a historian. And it's so lovely to have seen her growth as an honorary geographer. And just the insight she presents from the educational perspective is always so good to listen to and hear again. And then Mary, our Dr. Mary. I just love the welfare of the underdog. Always that deep rural community, that sense of digital divide. She makes us think about it. And it shouldn't disadvantage people, but it's always a concern. So thank you for all bringing your expertise and your different perspectives to, I think, what's been a very, very interesting and most fascinating webinar. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much and have a lovely evening. And I think we'll just add thanks to Bridget for being the powerhouse behind organizing all of this. So have a lovely evening and we look forward to the next one, Bridget. Good night, everyone. Bye-bye.